Let it begin.
Back to the projects.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
You first, I guess. Yeah, back to the projects, back to the mess. Everything's pulled apart. Down here.
Watermaker parts. Went into town yesterday and got some wire. We have number 6 wire. Paid $100 for about 20 feet of it, along with the little terminals.
More about that in a bit. We have wire for 2 projects we're doing. So one is we're going to rewire our inverter. We've been running it with way too thin a wire and we want to make sure we can really max the amperage out on that. So we're going to run 50 amps or plan for 50 amps through that with a new breaker on it. First project is to pull out all of our stuff from the locker so we can get in here. Buried down here is our diesel heater, which is hiding out for a later project. But packed away nicely below here is our motor and pump for our Watermaker project. Got to get that out first. Gasket for our heater. Backing plate for our heater. We need a stuff putting place so that when we...
Called a bigger boat.
A bigger boat. Stuff that you don't have to move. Always have to move stuff. Like every now and then you just got to pick up a heater and you got to move it around. So this here is, I think we probably showed it, but this is our little diesel heater. We keep saying it's a later project because if anyone would like to just install a diesel heater, come on down so we don't have to do that project. It'd be cool. Just joking. All right, I found it. Down in here. I'll take you into the locker. Oh, over here is our pump. We're gonna get that out. You'll see that much better if I get it out of here, because right now I can't see much. It doesn't fit out with me. Okay.
It's like some weird contortionist magic act.
There it is.
There it is.
Woo! Alright guys, this is all of our stuff for our Watermaker.
Ta-da!
What is a Watermaker? First of all, it's not actually a Watermaker, it doesn't make water.
Kind of.
Kind of. Technically it's a desalinator.
Makes fresh water out of salt water.
Right. So
not water out of magic.
No. That would be cool.
That would be cool.
But water out of magic is something still being developed and is not around right now. So we're going to live with making fresh water out of salt water, which is what a desalinator is.
Yeah.
And this is all the parts for our desalinator and our project that we're going to get underway with.
We're very excited about it. Ever since before we even bought Varuna, a Watermaker was something that was on our list, and then we didn't want it, and then we wanted it. So it's something we've been thinking about, going backwards and forwards about for quite a long time. Recently we've been doing quite a bit more research into the different ones available, building our own even, and then we were lucky enough to find Stu out of Tucson.
It's definitely something you can do yourself. There's plans out there on how to make your own. I guess it's not that if you've got a technical background, you can probably figure it out. We didn't want to go through that technical background. We looked at it and then we just got too overwhelmed with the amount of money we'd have to put into all of this stuff and then not have it work together. Like one little thing's wrong, it's not an easy thing for us to go and return to the States and fix up. As Hillary said, we met up with Stu and Maggie of Sun Pure Watermakers, and that's their stuff that we have here today. A little bit more background on the ups and downs of why we have and haven't wanted a Watermaker. One of those big ones was cost. They're bloody expensive, and it was just something that didn't ever really fit into our ballpark. We couldn't find that right number that worked for us to justify it. So our disclaimer is that this is the cheapest one that we've found. Kind of assembled all the parts, everything together. We came across Stu and Maggie on eBay. Then that kind of led us to his website. We started reading through that, really liked it. It was another cruiser that was building these Watermakers for cruisers, so really knew what was needed and had a great variety, right? Engine driven, DC powered, which is what this is.
AC powered.
AC powered. I mean, it really kind of had everything covered that you could need that would work in practicality. Our disclaimer is we have never done like a product endorsement at this stage. We haven't endorsed a product. We haven't been sponsored by anyone of that nature. This is the first time it's something we really believe in. We reached out to Sun Pure Watermakers and to Stu and Maggie to see what we could do with a Watermaker and also talk about it as we do it, since we kind of like to show you our real world stuff, right? Of how it really looks when we're actually doing it, and if it works and doesn't work, and so on, pros and cons. So Stu and Maggie were nice enough to set us up with this unit at their cost price. So it wasn't free by any means, and we're still going to talk about it as we do it with the pros and cons.
Kind of the real world installation and how it works.
We just wanted to be,
first time.
Yeah, we'd like to be transparent with you guys. We wanted to be very clear that we did get a discount on it, but it's not like a free unit or anything like that. We're paying the cost price. That's all. Let's get into it. All right, here's our parts list. So they've gone through and checked off everything that's in here. Pretty much everything here should be laid out. We're going to go through and point out the components. So our DC motor, it's a 1/2 horsepower motor. It's 12 volt DC, 39 amps. That is attached to our high pressure pump. Probably the key component, right? Because this is what's going to turn our low pressure water into high pressure to force it through the membrane. The pre-filter housing, a 5 micron pre-filter element, a spare one here, and also the wrench here for the pre-filter housing as well. We have a pickling agent right here, and we have a couple of rolls of Teflon tape. This here's our flow meter. You can see here it's a gallon per hour up to 12 gallons per hour, which is the max we expect to get on this unit particularly. Got our product line here. I believe this is 1/4 inch, could be 3/8. Over here is our booster pump. I think it's a 1.5 amp draw booster pump. Down here we've got the manual that comes with this. I've been reading over this quite a bit, and I will read over it a lot more. A lot of good information in here. Read through it many times. There's a couple of nice diagrams in here of the whole system as well. This is our needle valve and our pressure gauge. 8 feet of high pressure line, which will go into the membrane, and 10 feet of 1/2 inch poly braid, which is for our raw water. Got a 3-way brine valve over here, and we've also got a 3-way sample valve. These here are our mounting brackets for the membrane housing. We've got a stainless steel 3-way valve, which is the seawater in and the pickling line and so on. All right, the all-important membrane, which is where the actual reverse osmosis happens. This here is the housing. It's a 21-inch housing, I believe, along with a 21-inch filter. This is additional stuff that we bought based on the setup that we want to do and how we think we'll be able to make it work. We've got our 6-gauge wiring. We're planning on a run of around 8 feet on a 50 amp circuit breaker, which brought us to the 6-gauge wiring that we're going to use. Also got the terminal ends to go with that wiring. We've got a 3-way T, which will be used to tap into one of our lines to drain the brine overboard. And then we also have a 1/2 inch T, which we're going to use to tap into our raw water in, which currently is actually hooked up to our water-cooled refrigerator, which we don't really use, but we think keep it in place, so we'll tap into that line and use this first. And then along with that, we ended up going with a little 1/2 inch valve here as well, a brass valve, that we will use to divert the water or shut off the water for the refrigeration system altogether, so that we don't have any water flowing through there and reducing the pressure from that boost pump. That's the plan. I hope it works. We also have a fuse holder and a 2 amp fuse that will be used in line of the small boost pump that you saw, which is a 1.5 amp boost pump, so that should cover that. 50 amp circuit breaker. We also got a couple of standard electrical switches, like the light switch type things, along with the box that goes with that. And these will be one for the booster pump and one to run the high pressure pump.
The first step was to read and reread the manual several times. Next was finding a place to put it, which is always a challenge with anything on a boat. Luckily, the Sun Pure units are all modular, which gave us the ability to fit the parts in where we could, custom to our space on our boat. So that we didn't have to make any more holes in the boat, we planned to tap into an existing through hole from our water-cooled refrigerator. This intake leads to a sea strainer, and we plan to add a T-fitting inline immediately following it. With a plan in mind, we headed into town to run a few more errands before beginning.
Look at that, he came from the other side. Oh, here comes the other one, look. Water, look at him come. Yeah. You're the egg guys.
First stop was the local marine shop. We needed to crimp the terminals onto our wire, and the owner here was very helpful. allowing us to use their heavy-duty crimps for the larger gauge wire. Our second stop was a local woodworking shop to look for a scrap of wood that we could use as a mount for the Watermaker motor. Breaking out the tools, Ty planed, then sanded the wood block, prepping it to be epoxied. Using a penetrating or thinned epoxy, we soaked the wood, sealing it up to prevent any rot or decay. Then, we glued it to our chosen spot in the bilge using a thickened epoxy. It was finished with a single layer of fiberglass for a little extra strength and reassurance that it would be securely mounted. With the motor mount squared away, the next step was sorting out all of the hoses and fittings. While the Watermaker comes with most of these parts, based on our particular setup, we needed a few extra T's, valves, reducers, and hose to tap into our existing plumbing lines. These proved to be extremely challenging parts to source here in Mexico, and we spent several days running around town to marine, plumbing, and hardware stores trying to find any sort of fittings in the small sizes that we needed.
Gracias. Off the bus!
Off the bus!
This is Vallarta?
This is Nuevo Vallarta?
Nuevo Vallarta. This is the one built for
tourists.
For us people. It's the fancy part.
Once we finally had all the parts we needed, Ty began the strenuous job of putting the hose onto the barbed fittings.
The second time going in today.
I am feeling a bit under the weather. Got out of the dinghy and I fell in the water.
The calmest of water.
There was no surf or anything, but
this is probably the second time you've just fallen over. Like what? And the last time you did it twice in a row, though.
Don't have much energy, but anyways, I'm all wet. I need to go change. Using our fancy new battery tools we got.
Love it.
Do work at anchor.
It's a bit rocky though, you gotta be careful.
A bit rolly.
Using power tools while you're swaying. Easier to lose a finger. And always wear your safety glasses and shirts and stuff.
And shoes.
Children. So this is the membrane housing. And the membrane, the all important part of the Watermaker, which actually gets out the, desalinates it, I guess, gets the salt out. We're gonna mount it about here or so.
Because we've run out of other places.
Put it. And these blocks will come into play back here to give us a little bit of separation from the mounting wall. Alright, down in here, finally put in today, is our pump and motor. This is the high pressure pump part over here. Here's the DC motor. We mounted its center line, we epoxied in that block, fiberglassed it, drilled bigger holes, filled them with epoxy, and then re-drilled them. Our high pressure will go up here through this membrane, and then from the membrane the product water will come out and go through this flow gauge here. This flow gauge will basically tell us how many gallons per hour we're getting based on the rate of the output. This run runs from 0 to 12. Max we should be getting would be 12, depending on water temperature and other things.
Is this your new yoga pose?
Let's go, get me the F out of here.
bugger. How the heck am I supposed to put this on without a swivel? I have to like twist the whole pipe on. This end has a swivel, but I think that's for up here. I don't know, it's probably for either end. But we're going to pull the motor out and start again. So what I was trying to get in, I had to pull the motor out to get to it easy, but this is our high pressure line. It's going to go in here, and that will be the high pressure out. Raw seawater will go in here from the booster pump and the pre-filter. It'll pressurize it up to whatever setting we make on our little needle valve, and that is where it will come out the other end basically and go straight into the membrane. There's a pressure relief valve here as well, which I believe is set to like 950 psi. So if it goes that high, that will blow. We want to keep it well below that. We'll adjust it and see how we go once we get it running. Okay.
So you really like putting hose onto barbed fittings, don't you?
Yeah. God. It's freaking terrible. I swear the hose sizes are different. This is the better hose. This is the stuff that came with it. The stuff from down here seems like a totally different size, and I don't know how it's going to fit. Today might finally be the day where we're not done. Probably we'll sort of tidy stuff up, but we'll be able to maybe run the Watermaker.
Woohoo!
Woohoo indeed. This is the housing. We have to hook that up now. It's probably the part I'm most nervous about because the membrane needs to go inside it and we don't want it to dry out. So I kind of want to get that all done and hope that works okay. On the end of the membrane, down this end here, will go this end cap. This has, this is where the high pressure will come out. This is the valve, the needle valve to control the PSI that's in the membrane. And below that here, or in the center, is the product water valve. That will come out there. It's 1/4 inch hose on this one. It'll come out of that and it'll go over here into our, whoops, upside down, into the flow meter through here, up the top, so we'll see what our actual flow rate is, out of here, and then from here it'll go straight into our water tanks. From here that'll go to this 1/4 inch tube, which is basically an overboard brine filter. That'll send all the wastewater, the salt water and all that stuff overboard. So we're gonna pull this out. This is our starboard side water tank, and that's what we're gonna plumb into for now, somehow. We're gonna put in one of these little things somehow. I don't know, we're just gonna have to drill into it. I think we'll just drill into it and epoxy it in, glue it in, sit it in there for now. How are we gonna do this? There's Hillary. She's steering this out of the anchorage here. We're just going to head on out of the anchorage here and fire up the Watermaker for the first time. Think we've got everything in. Well, we're missing a key component here. I do not have the membrane set up yet, which is what I'm going to do now. So we're going to get the membrane in there. We don't want that to dry out, so it's going to be the last thing we do. Plumb in the end of those fittings. And then, let's see, we'll check for leaks. We'll hope it works. Fingers crossed that we did everything right. I hope we did everything right, but usually we'll probably need to do a couple of tweaks, right? Isn't that how it works after you do something? Anyway, stay tuned shortly. We're going to give this Watermaker a go. Right, we've got one end of our membrane housing partially assembled here. It's the clamshell on the end is just loosely attached right now. You can see the needle valve and the pressure gauge there. And then back here is where the product water will come out of. High pressure will go in down this end. I've got that end cap all lubed up and ready to go with the O-rings on it. Here's the actual membrane itself. This is what does all the actual desalinating. We're going to snip the end of it off and slide it on.
Alright, we're out kind of in the middle of the bay. We motored out a couple miles away from the marina and the anchorage just to get into some cleaner water, and fingers crossed it all goes to plan and fires up here.
So close.
So close. You ready?
think so. I'm double checking. I don't think I've forgotten any of the valves. Seawater strainer is open. Water cooled refrigerator is off. So that should take it through that. We should turn the booster pump on, which should give us water into the high pressure pump. Turn the high pressure pump on, that should give us pressure into the membrane, out through this, which is on sample, which should come out this line. And we have the brine. Make sure the brine's on the right one here. Overboard. Okay, let's try it.
All right, here goes nothing.
First time, let's crank it up. Booster pump. All right, I hear noise.
Yeah.
High pressure pump.
Hear noise.
I forgot a part though. I didn't put pipe thread on the pressure relief valve. So I've got, I had a leak coming out of there. So I'm just doing that now.
Throughout the entire installation process, we were happy to have Stu only a phone call away. He was happy to talk us through any problems that we had.
Second time.
Switch is on.
Booster pump, high pressure pump. We're gonna let it run for like a minute, try and purge all the air out of it. Make sure there's no air, we don't want any air in the high pressure pump. We had a leak here before on our first time. We were leaking around the pressure relief valve. I forgot to put the threading on that. So it's threaded now. So our needle valve, we're gonna slowly start to close it and see if we can bring some pressure up. Third time now. We had a leak here at the needle valve. I tightened it a little bit. How many volts?
12.85.
So we're right on about 11.5 gallons an hour. We're just over 900. We're going to back that off a bit. And so I got a couple of leaks down here I'm going to have to fix. Alright, what's our amp consumption there?
We are at 12.7 volts. As Ty increased the pressure on the needle valve, we monitored everything, recording output and power levels, along with our production.
Product water. See if we can turn seawater into fresh drinking water.
Magic.
I'm going to test it and see what the water is with our little parts per million TDSy doobie. Our first desalinated water from our Watermaker, right?
First homemade water.
You want to do the first sip? Or?
Sure.
Okay.
Tastes like water.
No, that's good.
Funny thing is, 364 days ago, 1 year ago tomorrow, was the first time we ever filled water in Mexico, in Puerto San Carlos, on my birthday.
So it's your birthday tomorrow?
It's my birthday tomorrow, and
30th birthday, that's a big one, right?
And I get water again for my birthday.
It's like an annual
cool
tradition. Gonna have to make sure we like get water every time. Now
Yeah.
we can make our own water though, that's pretty cool.
Maybe I can have a shower on my birthday.
All on solar, which is pretty neat.
It's
We're
really cool,
12.6 volts right now. I don't know what I'd say it's probably using, yeah,
Probably about 30 amps.
15 to 20, yeah, something like that. I don't know, I gotta do that math. We've had our Watermaker going now for about a week. Been putting it through its paces. A couple little tweaks along the way, maybe a couple more to go. I do have a little bit of a leak in the pressure relief valve that I gotta take apart and just clean that out.
But it's been going good. We've been doing it all on solar.
Yeah, it's been great so far. We're back here in the anchorage right now, and you could probably run it from this anchorage. I think it definitely affects the, you've got a lot more sediment in the water here, which just reduces the product flow, just makes it a lot harder. You get less production for still using the same power, I guess. This morning we ran through some more fresh water. Instead of pickling it, it's been like 3 or 4 days since we ran the Watermaker to make water, which we then flushed with fresh water. So about 4 days after that, we flushed through probably like another 2 gallons of water, fresh water through it.
Just so we didn't want to run it in the anchorage here, like Ty was saying, because it's a bit dirty. So instead of running it, just flush some water through.
Yep, just to keep the membrane clear, keep the pre-filter clean. So that's all sitting in fresh water right now. If we're going for a longer period of time, we would then
Pickle it.
pickle it. Like we said at the start, this is just what fit our needs for our kind of price point and then how much production we wanted. We definitely wanted something DC. If you want a bigger unit, you can definitely talk to Stu about that. He makes some. Sun Pure Watermakers has those available, so talk to him and Maggie about it. Stu's a great bloke, very helpful, always there when you need him, and happy to answer any questions that you need along the way.
If you contact Stu from Sun Pure Watermakers, be sure and mention us, Adventure Adrift, Ty and Hillary, and he'll give you a $50 discount, so that's pretty cool. And we'll be sure and keep you up to date in the future weeks episodes on our water protection and how it all works out running off of solar.
Well, that's all for this time, guys. We hope you really enjoyed this episode. It wasn't so much sailing, it was a lot more boat work, but thanks for watching either way.
Yeah, and a huge thanks to all of our followers and supporters. If you enjoyed the video, remember to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe, all that good stuff.
And until next time,
Adios!
Cheers!
Let's see. Over here is... Hey, what is that? What's that doing there? What is that?
Availability of getting parks and fixing it if we need to.
start that again.
I said parks.
You said parks.
Okay. You look like an ostrich burying your head in the sand.